we are going. What is going on with everybody? It is your boy. Honestly, not going to do the whole introduction because it's a very different thing right here. Um, and I don't want to do too much talking. I'm actually going to pass the ball, as I said off camera. This is your Chris Paul for today, guys, and I'll let him do his thing. So, with no proper introduction, I'll let him introduce himself and actually what's going on today. So, the ball's in your court.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. So let's see what happens here. Um, Not being an on-air personality myself and not having much of a on-air status, I don't really do a lot of interviews or anything like that. I thought this might be kind of like a fun experiment. So for those that are watching and don't know about the two of us, my name is Dr. Scott Goldman, and I am a licensed psychologist, but has been operating in the performance space at the NCAA and NFL and NBA for the last 20 years. Eric, you were kind enough to kind of shoot your shot, as the kids like to say, and you reached out to me and said, hey, let's talk. And you interviewed me, and I found it to be a really fascinating interview. It was different than anything I had done before, and it was notable and dynamic and special. And when it was done, you and I kind of started to exchange some emails. And I said, gosh, you're really good at what you do. And this is just bringing the audience into our conversation, So I wrote, I said, Eric, I'm blown away. Like, you're really good at what you do. What do you want to do with your life? And what's your end game and your goal and your narrative? And you kind of were pretty honest and vulnerable about it. You're like, I'm not quite sure. I'm passionate about a few things, but I'm wanting to explore. So then I said, and again, this is in an email exchange, I said, would you want to have a conversation like this and we capture it so that people can kind of understand what performance psychology kind of looks like? And something that I really appreciate and respect about you is you were like, let's do it. Let's roll. So I've always gravitated towards people who are curious explorers. And I use both curious and exploring differently, because curiosity is really about like, it's sort of like when someone you love, like your girlfriend or your boyfriend or someone, smells that milk and they go, oh, I think this is bad. You should smell this. That's curious. Yeah. And exploration is the one that actually goes and smells it. Right. So I'm curious to see where this conversation goes. And I'm really looking forward to how we roll. Does that sound like a good outline of what we're going to do here?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that sounds really fun, and I'm a guy who I like to experiment. I like to take risks. So when I seen this, like I said, I'm interested in psychology. So for this to kind of be like a psychological type of thing, it intrigued me. So yeah, man, I'm very intrigued to see where this goes.
All right, so let's start with this. If you could tell us a story that best exemplifies who you are.
I'm going to start off by saying this is going to be interesting because I'm so used to asking the question. Now I'm answering the question. So this is going to be interesting. All right. So a story that best tells who I am.
Yeah.
Let's see. A story that best tells who I am. I mean, there's so many. I was talking about this with somebody recently, because they were asking me, they're like, do you think it's weird that I have so many different versions of myself? And I told her, I was like, no, I don't think so. I was like, I think that none of us is just like this one linear person, like a super happy or super mad or just super whatever person. So there's so many sides. I could tell you two stories of like both sides of the coin type of thing, if that's okay. One,
Sure.
I like to I like to think of myself as like a selfless person, or I try to be a selfless person. And one of those stories I would bring up is when I was 16, I was at the fair, and I was at the fair. There was this big fight that happened, and I was with two friends. They ran to the fight. I didn't feel like watching a fight. That was not my thing. So I stayed back to talk to somebody else. So I caught up with them 5 minutes later, and one of them was missing. And I'm like, "Where's David at?" And he says, "Oh, David got thrown out by the police." And then I seen him come back in with like one shoe on. I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's trying to prank the police. I'm like, what is he doing? So I asked him like, why are you like, why'd you get thrown out? And he was like, the cop punched me. And I was like, what? And he was like, the cop punched me for no reason. So I was just very thrown off. Then he was asking another cop for his other shoe. The guy was like, where's your shoe at? He's like, the cop punched me. I don't know where it's at. And then the cop that I guess punched him was like, hey, I already threw your ass out. You need to get out. So they start arguing. They start arguing. And this is like right off of the heels of like, I think like maybe it was somebody who got shot in the news, and it was a very heated argument. And I know my friend is a very heated person, and in that moment, I thought, wow, David's about to get shot because he's either going to punch this cop or he's going to do something really crazy because he was really emotional. So I stepped in, and I was like, yo, I was like, calm down, calm down, calm down. Tried to calm everything down. Then another cop came and like basically was like, hey, you want to be a part of this? Puts my hand behind my back, and I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He was like, stay. He was like, stay still, stay still. And my phone is about to fall out my hand, and he basically leg sweeps me, and I knock out, and I hit the ground, and I'm like, just knocked out for like minutes, and I'm drug out of there. And make a long story short, we tried to file a police report, nothing happened. But I think that's a story where I think like I was thinking about that recently, and I was like, yo, I could have got seriously hurt because it was a very tense situation. But just in that moment, I was thinking, yo, I have to save David. Like, I gotta save him because I don't want anything crazy to happen. So that's just me kind of being like selfless to the point where I could have injured myself. So just I guess loyal by a fault almost to a point. So that's one story, and I don't know. That's just a story that's one story that really sticks with me. I can't even think of anything else. That's just one that like that really kind of shaped a lot of my thoughts about society and the way that I just react to certain things. So that's like a story that really made a big impact on my life. So that's something that I feel like shaped me after years after. So yeah.
So let's start with that as a concept. A moment like that, you use the word shape. I think that's a great word choice. And I think what's interesting is you could shape yourself in a lot of different directions. One that's based off of distrust, one of rebellion, one of fear, one of anger. You chose, if I heard you correctly, you chose to highlight the word selfless. That when I said, hey, give me a story that best exemplifies who you are, you're saying, I have to save Dave. My priority was all caution to the wind. I have to be selfless. So can you tell me about selflessness and what that means to you?
I always joke around and I say I want to try to live like Jesus. I just want to try to like give to the people and be for the people. So I don't know. Like um, I grew up just having compassion for people. So when I see homeless people or when I just see people that's less fortunate or just don't have it like the next person, I'm the person to like every time a homeless person asks me for money, I'll try. Hey, if I really don't have it, like I tell them, I'm so sorry. I'll sit there and talk to them for 10 minutes just to maybe money would have been better, but that conversation maybe could have brightened their day, you know? So just one of those type of things. Or only thing I'm not selfless about is food. I'm a very greedy person. So if you ask my food, I will literally go buy you food rather than give you my food. But I'm a person that really tries to I try to, I feel like my purpose on earth is to make people smile. And that's doing it for other people. So, yeah, I don't do it to like, oh, I did my good deed for the day. I just do it because it's like, hey, I feel like this is the right thing that people should do. So, I feel like that's why I'm selfless and like my concept of selflessness come from.
And that actually segues us beautifully to where I think I would want to spend some of the core of our conversation. You talked about your purpose. So let's start at more of a 60,000 foot view before we get all into the high def into the granular sand. In your opinion, what's the difference between purposefulness and meaningfulness?
That's a good question. Uh, when I think of purposefulness, I think of I don't know because I was gonna say I think of meaning of life, but I don't want to use the word in the definition. So when I think of some like your meaning in life and your purpose in life, I don't actually wouldn't know how to contrast those. Like I would put that like in the same vein. Maybe that's just my lack of, of definitions, but yeah, I would use those as like synonyms basically.
So sometimes, we as psychologists, we can just play with, I call it like word salad. We
Mm,
just play with words and make them mean something to fit our own narrative. But for the sake of this conversation, let's commit a little bit of a word salad felony here. Um, for the sake of this conversation, let's say purposefulness is something that's greater than yourself, like taking on a mission that's about being of service to others, kind of like you were saying, making other people smile or being selfless. Meaningfulness maybe is something that provides you with some kind of personal satisfaction. So if purposefulness is for others, let's just define meaningfulness as being selfish or something for you.
okay.
So if we can go with that, what gives you meaning? What gives you a sense of meaning?
Um, on a like human level, my mother, just in general, that's like the person that's close to me. Just like making her happy gives me meaning because I know that I'm doing something like that makes me feel good. Like oh my mom, I made my mom happy or smile or whatnot. So a lot of things I do it for her. Um, what gives me meaning? To gain knowledge. That gives me meaning to have like more knowledge about myself, about just things in general. I'm a big history buff, so learning things that I feel like in history that could repeat itself or affect me or have affected black people, that really gives me a lot of meaning. Um, yeah, just I would say knowledge, my mother, and and recently physical shape, like getting in shape like that. That makes me feel like I'm eating better, things like that. Actually taking care of myself. So yeah, taking care of myself, basically knowledge and my mom. Those are like the top three for me at this point right now.
All right. And maybe because it's around our lunchtime. I don't know if you've had lunch or breakfast today, but you keep kind of centering around, hey, I would go give somebody food. I'm greedy about food. So if you need to grab a granola bar or something to give yourself a little bit of fuel, like by all means,
For
eat
sure.
away while we're talking.
For sure.
Um, all right. I think what's really interesting is, so you're tying meaningfulness into your relationship with mom, which is still somewhat of a selfless act, but there are many who argue there's no such thing as a truly selfless act because, again, to do something that's charitable makes us feel good. That's selfish. Um, but you also talked about knowledge, gaining knowledge of self and knowledge of history. Tell me about this pursuit of knowledge. Tell me about your quest for knowledge.
That's just like growing up in school. I used to think science was my favorite subject, but as I got more into history, that was just like that's I'm just so intrigued by history. Like I could sit down and look at like when the pandemic first started, I was looking at a whole bunch of documentaries about like the Black Plague and things of that sort because I feel like you're a fool without knowledge. Like without any knowledge, there's hard to really navigate and be successful through this life because there's so many obstacles throughout this life that if you don't have the knowledge, you're lost. For example, not to go back to the whole selflessness thing or whatever, but one thing I want to do when I get older is to like I want to get my doctorate and I want to become a clinical psychologist to help a lot of black people who are very weary and cautious of therapy and just very dismissive of it because I feel like a lot of them don't have the knowledge of what therapy is. You tell a lot of them what therapy is, it's like, oh, it's for crazy people. That's for people who are losing their mind or whatnot. So I would say that a lot of them don't have the knowledge about just medical things in general. A lot of black people are very skeptical of medical things because of the history of medical systems of America and black people, and I think that is due to them having lack of knowledge. And me myself, I would want to be a person who is not ignorant and knowledgeable about things that are of my culture, of other cultures, of just everything. Because I don't know, I like to be like a I like to feel like a walking encyclopedia, so I can have a conversation about you with the paintings on your wall. Like, oh, that's that. It's like I want to be able to have a conversation about anything. So yeah, just being a knowledgeable person. I like to learn.
Someone once gave me this expression. They called it justified paranoia.
Mm,
So they said, as a person of color, um, uh, and I think, something I want to be aware of is, do you have, when referencing, say, like skin color or race, do you have a preference, like person of color versus black person versus BIPOC?
Oh,
Like, what?
I say like if I'm referencing a black person, I say black person. But I mean, if whatever makes the other person feel comfortable, I don't like care what you say or another person says. So whatever makes you feel comfortable, you can say it.
Yeah, this conversation is about you. We're going to make you feel comfortable. So, what if I were to use a phrase? What phrase would you want me to use,
I mean,
or a description?
if we're talking about black people, like I said, I say black person, so I guess you can say black person as well.
Okay, so a friend of mine uh, was explaining to me this term. He called it justified paranoia. And what he said was, if I walk into a room and I'm the only black person walking into this room, people are going to look at me more than they might look at other people because I just stand out. I am different than everybody else in the room. And so the reason why it's called justified paranoia is you might feel that discomfort, right? Like, not you specifically, but anyone who recognizes that they're different, if whether they're the only female in an all male room or they're the only whatever the minority status, right? And so it's justified because, yeah, people are actually looking at you more and more than everybody else. So I bring it up because you're kind of talking about having that sort of awareness, and that seems to be folding into your narrative about one of your visions becoming a clinical psychologist to help try to normalize the experience in a way so that you don't have justified paranoia when walking into a particular room or environment. I think that's such a cool concept. So I'm going to put a little, so if you see me kind of looking away, that's just me taking notes because I want to really listen to what you're saying. Someone once told me that I listen deeply, and I find, because I'm an old fart, it helps to write down so that I'm not trying to hold the thought
Yeah.
and not listen deeply. So if you see me look away, it's just me writing
I
some
want to say
notes.
that I've thought about doing that in interviews, like when somebody's talking, so I don't forget. So I've thought about doing that same exact thing. So yeah, that's what I figured you were doing when you were looking down. Yeah.
All right, beautiful. All right, so, and my hope here is that there's a stream of consciousness that if we walk down this thread, we get to kind of a cool result. And I do have a place that I hope we land or get to, that's based off of our emails, and when it reveals itself, hopefully we can discuss why and how. But let's transition. So we got meaningfulness kind of down. Let's talk about purposefulness. You already alluded to it, but what gives you a sense of purpose? What are you passionate about?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, it's really just like making people smile. So even if it's uh, cheering somebody up, making somebody laugh, making this video right here to hopefully get somebody through there. Like hopefully somebody watches this and they have some type of it hits some type of nerve. Like yo, that made me want to do something. So yeah, it's really just like helping people. My friend Rari, who's a complete opposite of me in a lot of ways, he always says that man, Eric try to save everybody, man. He's like, you can't save everybody, bro. He's like, everybody cannot be saved. You want to save everybody on earth. And he always tells me that. And like I said, kind of going back to the police story, maybe that's just something, like maybe that's something to a fault because I do try to save everybody. If I'm looking at something and I could talk to them and they're sad, I'm going to be that person to try to reach out and be like, yo, you ever thought about doing this? You ever thought about doing that? Because I don't know, it's almost like a natural instinct. It's almost like if I threw a ball at you and you were to flinch, that's your natural reaction. My natural knee jerk reaction is to reach out and try to see what's going on with that person. So yeah, that's that gives me purpose.
So it's interesting, right? Because you started with something of joy and happiness, like, I just want to make people smile. I want to, cheer people up. And then you slightly twisted it to, I want to save people.
Mm.
Don't you think that's two different value quests?
I think that see, that's for other people to determine because I've never said save people. My friend, he's used that terminology, save people, and maybe it is quote unquote saving people. But the way I look at it as, I want to make people feel better. I want to help people brighten their day or whatever. But maybe I do take it to certain extents where I'm quote unquote saving people and I just don't realize it.
So let's kind of challenge that thought for a sec. Something that I think a lot of people are drawn towards the field of psychology is the idea of saving folks. It's interesting to kind of use just medical terminology, right? Like you sprain your ankle, you go to a doctor, they help you figure out a way to get your ankle back in normal or back in healthy. And so people go, oh, well, psychology, at least the medical wing of psychology, has some kind of similar process, right? So if someone has a sexual assault or a trauma, car accident, etc., that would be the equivalent of a leg break. Mm. And the therapeutic process now is the cast and the rehab. Others think of it as like, oh no, it's not a leg break with a trauma, but it could be something more like asthma, a condition that's to be maintained and treated throughout the course of one's life with proper decision-making and medication. So if you're asthma, you take an inhaler. So the parallel to that in psychology is almost like somebody being diagnosed with depression. It's not like there's really a known cure. It's just to say, hey, you could do some things from a cognitive behavioral perspective or from a medication perspective that could help you manage your life with depression. What's interesting to me about that is that kind of thinking of psychology and psychological practice falls under the saving others umbrella. And I have found both during my training with peers and colleagues and with my supervision and mentorship that becomes a recipe for disappointment. It's really hard to save people. There's like this old really bad dad joke. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Do you know this one?
I don't. I mean, I've heard the old light bulb setup before, but I haven't heard the psychologist one before.
Right. So how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light bulb has to really want to change. So I find when I'm having a conversation with folks, what I try to do is I prevent this hierarchy, like I fix you kind of thing, and make it more about a conversation or discovery. In other words, if we can create an environment where someone can process what's going on with their life, then it becomes something to dialogue, and hopefully the dialogue yields some output. Because if the goal is to save somebody, if they don't get saved, does that mean like we failed or something, right? So if you were to take a priority in your purposefulness, and life isn't isolated, it's not mutually exclusive, but if you were to take a priority, would you rather make people smile, or would you rather take a route like a clinical psychologist who is helping those process what's going on in their life?
See, this is this is honestly the way that I look at it, and I mean maybe this doesn't happen, but the way I look at it as I keep doing these interviews, whatever I'm doing, just like video stuff and doing a little silly comedic stuff, and it makes people smile. While I'm in college, I still want to earn my doctorate degree, and maybe when I'm later in life, don't want to do this anymore, I could start to doing the clinical psychologist route. So, in the way that I look at it, I do want to fulfill both because I do enjoy both. I do enjoy talking to people. Like if a friend calls me and I'm sitting there letting them vent to me and I'm trying to help them, and I do also enjoy making the videos or whatever. So I don't know if I could pick the two right now. Right now, I'm enjoying doing this. I'm enjoying the content or whatever. But when I get older, I do probably see myself, because I'm a very introverted person. So I kind of like my social battery kind of just dies down after a moment where I just don't feel like doing this. So I could see myself being more relaxed in a place where I'm doing clinical psychology as I'm older.
Yeah. Well, so here becomes an interesting kind of thought is, what's the commonality? What is it about these interviews and the clinical psychology route? What's the commonality? What's shared between those two worlds?
Well, I think one, I could be myself in both without being judged. That's a big one. Two, I think the obvious what we've been talking about this whole time. They can make people smile. They can make people feel better. You know, the clinical psychology and doing these videos, um, and yeah, I think really being myself is something that I'm really fond of because when I think of going to a psychologist, I went to a counselor when I was older, due to my mom and dad having a divorce. And we used to go to, her name was Miss Joyce. We used to go to her house, and she didn't have on a suit or anything. She would just have on her house clothes, and it felt so comfortable. It felt like I was just at a person's house that just wanted to help me. So I thought that if I was to ever do that, I might wear a bonnet. I might just come natural because I want that person to be like, wow, like this feels like at home. I'm just so cozy. So yeah, I think the two of just really just being yourself, I think that's something like originality and uniqueness and being yourself. That's something that's really like attractive to me. So yeah, I think that's like the big one for me in the commonalities.
Why do you describe yourself as an introvert?
Uh, man, I don't. I really people like I tell people that and they're like, yeah, but you do videos, you're outside, you're doing all this crazy stuff. But I really like to be home. Like when this pandemic hit, this is really how I've been since forever. Like I don't go to parties, I don't go to clubs like that. I don't go to I really don't do anything unless I have to. Like I go to a club if I have to do a video there. But if I'm going to clubs just to have fun, that's not really for me. I really like being myself. I really like being to myself. I'm the only child, so I had to kind of grow up entertaining myself. I didn't have a brother or sister to play with or go outside with. Everything was playing the game by myself, playing basketball by myself. So I'm just so used to being by myself that now when I'm with a group of people, I'm just like, yeah, like I could be around like people for only so long where I'm just like, all right, I'm ready to go home.
Someone gave me this definition. They think people will often describe someone who's prone towards introvert as they don't want to connect with other people. And in fact, I don't think that's the case. I think human beings generally want to connect. I think an example of introvert by comparison to an extrovert is how much fatigue they feel after that interaction. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you were talking earlier, where you're like, I'll interview some folks and I try to be entertaining and engaging, but afterwards it's like it just takes a lot out of me. Um, so, so that kind of brings me to again looking for a common theme between what gives you meaningfulness, what gives you purpose. I do see a theme that's starting to trend, and I'm wondering if it's maybe potentially your superpower. So I'll ask you first, what's your superpower?
I don't know. It's a question I never thought about, and I definitely don't have the answer to that because I don't know. Doing this already feels so like I feel like not narcissistic, but I'm like I'm just like oh I'm the most selfish person of all time. I already feel weird. So yeah, I don't know what's my superpower. I don't know. I would imagine you have something written down on that handy dandy notebook. What do you what do you have?
Well, it's interesting, right? So again, kind of just knowing that this is being videotaped, something interesting just happened in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked you a question that kind of is like, "Hey, let's open up the rib cage. Let's go in there," and you went, "Hey, whoa, hey," like kind of like, "I'm feeling a little uncomfortable here." Like, there's almost this idea of a monitor, like you're self monitoring. You're going, "Here I am talking about being selfless, but all we're doing is talking about me." This is a little uncomfortable and awkward, and so that happens in certain conversations. What I do if this wasn't being recorded is when we have a moment like that where someone kind of says, "Hey, whoa, I got to kind of put up the electric fence here a sec, like take a step back." I sort of acknowledge. I go, "Hey, like, should we take a step back? Should we take a moment to breathe, or should we kind of like push through that discomfort?" So, before I talk about what's on my handy dandy notebook, should we take a step back, or
No,
should we continue to push forward?
I'm also a person. I thrive in uncomfortable situations. I like to make people feel uncomfortable to see how it feels. So no, I'm not uncomfortable to that point. But I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, I wonder how I hope I don't sound too self absorbed during this conversation. That was my only thought. But I don't feel too uncomfortable where we gotta take a step back. I think we could push through for sure.
Well, okay, and just to help encourage us moving deeper into the mist, I would make the argument. that you putting this authentic kind of vulnerable self out there, again, whether or not we post this video or not, is going to be your choice. But the idea of pushing yourself forward and everything, I think in some ways is a selfless act. So it's interesting, right? Because if somebody's watching this and they witness your discomfort and they witness how you navigate that discomfort of talking about yourself, then that becomes something that maybe they become more comfortable talking about themselves. And I think there is something to the idea of being authentic that doesn't have to be braggadocious. Like, you're not saying you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. I almost wonder if the word that might have caused that electric fence to kind of drop was I said superpower, as if it's something about you that's special or incredible. And you're like, I don't want to talk about my specialness because I feel like that might come across weird. So I could switch the word from superpower to what's just something that you're really grateful that you have the ability to do. What's something that you do that's really, I don't want to use the word proud, but something that you are confident you believe you can do well.
I think it is make people laugh. Like I think it is to put a smile on people's face. Like I think that since a young kid, that was always like a thing that like I felt like I could do. Like I felt like I could brighten a room, or I could be the one to make people feel better, or whatever. So, yeah, that's like when I was in eighth grade, people would be like, "Yo, you need to do a YouTube channel," but I was like, "No, I don't want to do a YouTube channel. I don't know what I would talk about. Like that's not interesting to me." But back then, I guess these two girls named Lauren and Nicole, they were like the ones that I guess they seen it in me. They were like, "Yo, you need to like you're a very very like entertaining person. You could entertain others." So yeah, I would say being an entertaining person to make people entertained or laugh or whatever. So that would probably be my thing that I think that I'm pretty neat at.
So I've been studying some Eastern philosophy lately, um, Chinese philosophy most specifically. I came across two concepts that seem to be kind of resonating with me right now in this conversation. One is called Wu. I'm probably mispronouncing that, so I apologize in advance to those that would know the language better than I. But Wu, as I understand it, is about this kind of like spontaneity, right? It's, you know, offshoots and other aspects of it are things like in Taoism, the idea of being, in the now. I think right now in the world of sports and a little bit of life as well, everybody's kind of talking about mindfulness. So, sometimes it's like what's old is new again. But I like the way Wu focuses on the spontaneity of it. I don't know how our paths crossed. You sort of saw something and you said, hey, let's do this. And that was a spontaneous move. And I spontaneously responded like, okay, let's give it a try and let's see what happens. And here we are. But one of the connected elements in the Eastern philosophy to Wu is something called de, which I wish it didn't have the connotation that it does in American society, like duh. But it's duh is it's a quality of charisma. It's a quality of attractiveness where, like, I think the best way I would describe it, like when I talk to athletes about it, is it's just about being cool. Like when you're a cool dude and people are just like, they gravitate towards you, like they just want to be with you or they want to follow your lead because you're cool, you're charismatic, you're likable. And so I think something that you do exceptionally well, and this is what I wrote down, is I think you have the ability to authentically connect to people. And I think part of it comes from that concept of duh. Like, I think you have a charisma and a natural way to connect that I think is really, really special. I mean, you clearly made an impression on me, for whatever that's worth. So now comes the next kind of thought, sort of the final chapter in our story, if you will. If meaningfulness is about kind of gaining knowledge and having a sense of history and making your mom happy, and purposefulness is about helping people feel good and feel better about who they are and making them smile and laugh and enjoy. If we bring this all full circle and you have this great authentic connection, you have this duh, as they say, what do you want to do with this potential?
Man, that's the age old question, and like I was saying in our emails, there's so many ways that I could take it because there's so many avenues for those outlets to make people smile and live out that purposefulness and meaningfulness. So, um, yeah, right now at this very moment, I'm doing the interviews really heavy. Either if that's one-on-one interviews or I would do public interviews like the Jay Leno jaywalking segments and things of that sort. I do a lot of that. So right now I'm doing that for the most part. But in the future, there's no telling I could be doing what you're doing to another YouTuber. In the future, I could be trying to find their purpose with this. So that would be pretty cool. But yeah, I have an idea. Like I said, I'm in college. I'm working towards the doctor degree. So that's something that I do want to obtain. And yeah, I'll try to take it step by step. But right now, the interview seems to be making me happy. Seems to be making other people happy. So just doing content in general, um, it seems to be the thing right now for me.
So if you had a dream day, like you're like, man, this was a good day,
Hmm.
what would it look like? What would it be filled with? What would you be doing?
Um, Man, my dream day. Uh, that would be that would be me waking up, of course, and you asked a lot of things I've never thought about before. So I'm sorry if I take a little time to think about it because I've never thought about these things. Um, but yeah, it's me waking up and it's me just really trying to, I don't know, maybe I do a public interview. That would be something because I haven't did that since the pandemic started, and that's something that a lot of people miss. A lot of people ask me about, so I'll probably do one of those. Um, I I I I write some stuff because I've been writing a lot of like my thoughts on paper to see if I could do a small like stand up, see if I could do like a 5 minute stand up, 10 minute stand up. So I'm just writing a lot of thoughts on paper. So that would be me doing that. Um, and maybe I do a couple interviews and I'm so boring. So I say just do some homework and go to sleep. Like I don't know. I don't know what the dream day would be because I can't even think about like something like I would love to write for a TV show, So that would be a dream day where I could spend a day writing on a TV show or writing on a movie or something like that. So I don't know what the dream day would be, but it would consist of things of that sort. Doing the public interview, doing my interviews, writing thoughts on paper, maybe writing for somebody, even if that's for a TV show or another comedian or something of that sort. So yeah, I think that would be things that I would do on a dream day.
So I think you have a blessing and a curse.
Mm.
Sometimes I like to give this metaphor. I find it to be helpful. Not all who wander are lost, to quote the Grateful Dead, right? So I think there's something really cool about just kind of wandering, like to be a leaf on a river, right? Again, to go back to Uwe, it's about that spontaneity and seeing what happens. I just think sometimes when people are so present minded, like a leaf on a river, they go, how did I end up here? It's like, gosh, this is 10 years later, and I'm not quite sure I fully understand where I am and how I got here and why the things that I did do or did not do have now limited my choices. That if I could go back to my 20-year-old self and do it all over again, I would have done it with such wisdom, right? So I go there because the metaphor that I like to use is you have a little bit of a curse of being gifted. I really do think you're special. I really do think you're gifted. And I gravitate towards people who are exceptional. I gravitate towards people who are gifted. I think visionaries and entrepreneurs, I love the courage that it takes and that curious explorer mentality that we talked about earlier. So people who I think are less talented, they're stranded on a deserted island. They go, you know what? There's nowhere I can go. I'm stuck on this island. I just got to wait for somebody to come and kind of pick me up. Extremely talented people are more lost in a desert. They go, you know what? I can go in 360 degrees right now. I just don't know. Do I go north? Do I go south? Do I go east? Do I go west? Do I go one click south, one click west of north? Like, what direction do I go? And what can lock people up, I think, sometimes is they go, hey, if I go north and there's an oasis or nirvana 350 miles away, I'll get there. But shoot, what if I had only gone south and that oasis was 2 miles away? So there becomes this like, okay, well, because of that sort of thought process, I'm just going to sit here and wait to see which path kind of reveals itself to me. And so both people, the one on the island and the one in the desert, neither of them are going anywhere. But what handcuffs them is really two different mindsets. And I see and hear in you a person with such potential, but also this idea of like, well, do I want to go the graduate school route with clinical psychology? Do I want to go with the interview route? Do I want to go with the stand-up comedy route? Do I want to go with the, write a TV show route? And like, one thing that I love, and maybe this is where you and I connect a little bit. I love comedians. I think what's really interesting is if you look at the history of psychology, that comes from philosophy. And if you look at the history of comedy, like that's what comedians are, just modern day philosophers. Like we both look at the world in a slightly different lens and go, I wonder what that is. I wonder what that means. Hey, that's kind of a weird quirk. I wonder if that's something that if we were to hold a mirror up, it would be something we would all laugh at. Like, why is opening a jar of pickles so hard? Maybe there's a whole comedic skit about something like that. And away we go. Another point that I wanted to circle back on that I really appreciate is you said, hey, you ask really good questions. And again, when we talked about doing this, what I wanted to do was to try to take a moment where we can invite people to watch what the process looks like. And people go, because I get asked a lot, well, what is it that you do? What do you do? What do you do? And I'm like, I don't know if I can describe it. I don't know if I've got an elevator pitch. And you just tapped into one big element of it. I think some people want to be the sage on the stage. I think some people want to be gurus who provide answers. And they tell people like, brush your teeth, go left, quit your job, go be an airline pilot. Like they have no problem being the answer guy.
Yeah.
I personally, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but for me personally, that's not my path or my process. What I like to do is I try to ask questions. I try to make the conversation that I'm having with the individual, the team, the group, the community that I'm engaging with, I try to ask questions that hopefully causes the conversation that we're having to be the start, not the end.
Yeah.
So where most people go, gosh, just tell me, Scott, like, should I be a comedian? And I'm going, yes, you should be a comedian. Like, there are lots of people who do this kind of job that way. I just worry a little bit that path or that process could be a little bit toxic. Because now I'm just guiding you to my path or my wants or my skewed lens versus some of what would be the goal by asking good questions, which is to get to your truth.
Yeah.
So now let's go one step deeper on this process. I'm going to challenge you a little bit.
Go for it.
What if I told you the origin of happiness is really just biochemical? That the origin of happiness is really about us as a species trying to preserve ourselves. That food makes us happy because the more we eat, the healthier we'll be and the more energy we'll be able to expend to get more food. Or things like an orgasm, which releases a ton of feel-good chemicals, is also related to procreation and replicating our genes or pushing our genes forward. So happiness is merely a mechanism of satiation, us feeling satisfied or full. Mm. So here comes the challenge. What if we're not really meant to pursue happiness? Because pursuing happiness is something that causes us to constantly recalibrate our definition of happiness. So, if I live in an apartment, I'm happy because I'm no longer in the cold or the rain. But then I go, the apartment's just normal. So you go, I'm going to get a house. You go, man, now I've got more space. I've got 2 bedrooms. This is amazing. I'm happy. Then you go, now I'm just kind of like, the house just feels normal. So you go, I'm going to go get a mansion. Like, there is a theory that's out there right now that talks about how the pursuit of happiness is meant to not be something that is satisfied. That we should always be hungry. Like, dogs don't chase parked cars kind of thing. Yeah. So I challenge you, because you have said, hey, a big part of my purpose is making people happy. What if that's a unaccomplishable mission? What would you do then?
I think it may be. Like I said, that goes back to my friend Rari saying that you can't save everybody. You can't I try to just make every situation better. That's impossible. And I do think that. I think that I just haven't wrapped my head around, like, yo, this is really an unattainable thing. Like, I'm still living in La La Land. Like, yeah, I can do this. But in reality, talking to you right now, that probably is not a real thing you could do. It's probably an unattainable thing, but just something I haven't come to grips yet with really yet in reality.
Well, so now I'm going to kind of play against what I just said, which again is just sort of the fun of having these types of conversations. If happiness and making others happy is unattainable, why do it?
That's a good question. I think that because in my mind, in my La La Land mind maybe, when I see somebody going through it, struggling or whatever, I think that, yo, whatever I did, even if it makes them feel better for the next 30 minutes, that person feels better. So I don't think that me having this conversation with this girl who's going through a bad breakup or whatever, it's probably not going to make her feel better for the rest of her life, because that next day she wakes up, probably still going to be in her mind, probably still going to go through the whatnot. But maybe she can take something from that conversation that could at least get her through it a little bit through that day, that she can retain and practice. So, yeah, I just feel like I said, even if I see a homeless person, I don't have any money, I'll have a conversation for that homeless person. That won't pay them to get food or anything, but maybe just one thing I said will probably keep them pushing the next 2 months from now. They'd be like, dang, I had that conversation with that guy. So that's probably why I do it, just to, just try as much as I can, even though it probably won't solve the situation. Just try to add some help.
Well, this brings us now full circle. And I think it beautifully highlights our conversation, which I've really enjoyed. So I want to thank you for your answers and your willingness to kind of go on this quest. I don't know what this is that we're doing, but I'm enjoying the walk, as they say. So this brings us full circle. We started with, what's the story that best exemplifies who you are? And you talked about a need to come running to David's rescue, right? Say, look, I'm going to put all things aside and just be there for my friend. I'm going to be selfless. And you've added the idea of like, hey, I'll have the conversation with the homeless person if I don't have food. And that kind of goes back to that, like, Maya Angelou quote, like, people don't remember what you tell them, but they remember how you made them feel. Mm. And that goes back to that Eastern philosophy of duh, right? To be so authentic, to be so true to yourself that you radiate with charisma that helps people feel a sense of closeness to you and a residue of joy from just having that brief moment. I think you don't necessarily have to pursue anything. You could just kind of be you and really make significant impact to those that are around you, because they'll remember how you made them feel. So what could potentially be liberating in your quest is, rather than trying to make people happy, you just do things that feel right to you. Focus on that authentic connection that you seem to have a natural gift for, and see what happens.
I'll try. I think that's very touching for you to say that. People will remember the way that makes you. People remember the way that you make them feel. I think that's a very interesting like quote, because yeah, this is interesting to me because it's not even about, like I said, it's not even about, I'm pretty sure you heard the saying, like, it's not about like how what you say, it's about how you say it. So that's kind of like that thing right there. So yeah, that's just a really interesting quote right there. So I appreciate that.
Well, and I'll leave you with this. I've been asked, I want to give a special note to one of the reasons that we continued our conversation afterwards was I got an email from Derek Boyd. And I want to say his name because I think he's a pretty dynamic guy too. And Derek said, wow, like, I really enjoyed your all's interview. Like, it did exactly, Eric, what you're talking about wanting to accomplish with these things. Is it touched him in a way, it impacted him in a way that had real meaning and resonance. And so I shared that with you. And that led me to go, okay, man, what you doing? And you were like, I don't know, I'm kind of still figuring it out, which I think is cool as hell. I really do. I love that potential. And I do. I think, I think Derek, the person who emailed me that continued our conversation, I think that guy's pretty special too. I think the way he sees the world, and just the fact what he touched on in our interview that made sense to him, I thought was a pretty dynamic way of thinking. I think you also are a really dynamic individual. And so I leave you with this. If there's something in your quest as you're trying to figure this stuff out where you want to circle back and talk, whether it's on camera or off, I'm happy to have the conversation with you, because your mission has a lot of purposefulness to it and also some meaningfulness. And I'd like to support it in whatever way I can. I think you make a lot of people feel really good. And to have more of those people on this planet and in our lives is got to be a good thing. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you for doing this, man. I mean, this is something that I would have never expected. There was this show on Viceland called Therapist, or The Therapist, where this guy would basically do therapy to celebrities or whatever. And I don't know, it's kind of what this was right there. This kind of was like a therapy session. It was just funny because I feel like I'm usually doing this to people, so it was weird to kind of be on the other opposite side. But I think I need to hear a lot of the things you said, and I feel like sometimes I don't have like the 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 prep, or not the prep, but like the people that to cheerlead me on or whatever. I feel like I'm doing the cheerleading all the time, so I think that you really, you said a lot of things that really resonated with me. So yes, for sure in the future, I will see what the people want to say. If you guys want to see this again, let us know. But I definitely think that in the future there needs to be a part two, because I feel like this was really good. You're really good at this. You need a YouTube channel. This is really good. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for the comment. I don't need a YouTube channel. I don't think that's my aim. But what I thought would be a really neat opportunity that's mutually beneficial is one, for you to have the kind of dialogue, and I'm glad that it was impactful. And two, I just thought it'd be kind of neat for people who are in your audience to go, oh, wait a minute, like, when you talked about helping populations that might not seek the care out, maybe it would be helpful for them to see that what it is it's about creating a space with really good questions that help people start a thought process, not end a thought process with an answer, but start a thought process with a series of questions. And so I thought this could be of mutual benefit to you, to me, and to anyone that's listening. Again, that's if you choose to want to share this video.
This video is
But
going up online. This video is. I love this. This video is going up for sure.
and the ultimate test will be if Derek Boyd emails us again.
Yes, he's shout out to him. I didn't I know you shouted him out. Shout out to him. He was really the connector. I appreciate if you got this far watching this. I appreciate you, brother, for reaching out, and I'm glad that because the one thing he took was he was like he appreciated you for respecting me, a random black kid with a bonnet, didn't have a suit on or anything, and that you talked to me as if you was talking to a Fortune 500 owner or something like that. So I appreciate you for being such a genuine person and wanting to do this. And yeah, like I said, I really do appreciate that. That's all I can say is I really appreciate it. So I let you kind of intro it. I'll let you outro it out as well. So if you have any last words you want to say, please say it.
Well, I think one thing is you and Derek are giving me credit for something that I like. That wasn't part of my thought process. The idea, the opportunity of us to talk and all that, it had nothing to do with politics or relations or any of the things that are going. The reason why I agreed to talk with you the first time was I liked how you reached out to me. I liked how you thought, and I liked what you were about. I really respected your values and your vision. And then we had the interview, which I don't know if you remember, and I don't know if you caught this on camera or not, but I even said to you, I was like, I'm a little bit afraid. Yeah. I was like, I'm not sure what's going to happen here. And you're like, dude, let's just do it. And I was like, okay. And it was almost like I was on the edge of the cliff, and you're like, don't worry, I got you. And you grabbed my hand, we just jumped. And it sounds like it was a good conversation because people resonated to it. And that made me want to circle back. And I do. I honestly, I think you're pretty special. I think you're a special young man with a really bright future. And I think having more people like you doing the things that you're doing is going to help our society in a lot of ways. So I'm grateful for this time. I'm grateful for this conversation. And I just want to thank you for being your authentic, true self and continue to be that great connector.
I appreciate that. For everybody watching right now, hopefully you guys appreciated it. And yeah, until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. I say what I mean what I say. Haters are gonna hate, players are gonna play. You guys holler at your boy.